that's where about 70% of applications sit. And if that's you, then you're automatically competing at the same level as 70%. So how do you get to that extra 30%? How do you get to the higher level of research? So I suggest starting doing your research now.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. Whether you're at school, sixth form, university, thinking about a career in law, or exploring law careers, you're in the right place. We are the one-stop shop for student lawyers. If you'd like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentLawyer.com. This podcast is brought to you by Feed Ignite. Welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. My name's Camilla and I'm an LPC student and future trainee solicitor. In this episode, we are joined by Hannah Wright, Early Ambitions Advisor at Shakespeare Martineau. Hannah will be sharing insights into how to increase your chances of making a successful application, how to shine during an assessment centre, impress during an interview, and what to do if you receive a rejection from your dream firm. So welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast, Hannah. It's great to have you here.
Hi, good morning, Camilla.
And just for the listeners who might not have listened to any of our podcasts before, this is a kind of a special episode for us today. Well, firstly, because Hannah is our first early ambitions advisor to come onto the show. So it's going to be great to get her insight, but also because I'm going to be joining Shakespeare Martineau as a trainee solicitor in 2022. So yeah, it's extra special to have Hannah here today.
That's great to be here.
So before we get into the questions, would you mind telling the listeners a bit about your career background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I obviously work at Shakespeare Martineau, Early Ambitions Advisor. My career background is a little bit different. I did a psychology degree going back quite a few years. I took some time out afterwards, went travelling. I've worked pretty much most jobs under the sun, I think. I worked in recruitment. I then went travelling again. I moved to Canada, lived in Canada for a while.
Wow.
And then came back in 2012, I think it was, and did my master's degree at Warwick in HR. And fell into the legal sector. I thought I was online for the financial sector. That's where my ambitions were. But sometimes life takes a bit of a detour and you go down a path you're not expecting, and it turns out to be brilliant. So I'm now 7 years experience in the legal sector. I've done all sorts of things in human resources, but early talent is always something I've had an eye on. Always something I've been involved in, something I'm very passionate about. Both recruiting great people, because I firmly believe that the early talent in the business, they are the future of the firm. So you are recruiting your future. So recruitment, but also how we develop those people so that they can be the best that they can be. So I've been at Shakespeare Martineau now for about 7 months. I joined in the middle of the first lockdown. And it's been fantastic. It's a fantastic firm to work for. When I was choosing a firm to work at, I was very picky, and Shakespeare Martineau was always at the top of my list. So I had very, very high expectations when I came into the firm, but I've been absolutely blown away. And I think particularly during the pandemic, the firm has really shown what sort of business it is, and how much they care about their employees. And what sort of future that they're going to have, which is fantastic to be a part of.
It's really great to hear. So let's get straight into the application advice now, because I'm sure listeners will be really keen to hear your insight on this. So it's no secret that law firms receive hundreds and sometimes even thousands of applications for training contracts and vacation schemes. And I think I actually read on Shakespeare Martineau's website yesterday, or I can't remember where it was, that you interview less than 10% of the applications that come in. So what makes a candidate stand out at the application stage? How can they make it into that top 10%?
Yeah, do you know what? It's really interesting. It's less than 10%. You're right.
Right.
And I think there are three things I'd really suggest that people do, and they are
if you do these three things, I think you stand in a really good position. So the first thing is research. And I think, how I've been working in recruitment related activities now for such a long time, that I know I can tell a lot from even the start of an application. There's there's a base level of research. I think most people, about 70% of people, will think that they want to work at the firm, and then a week or so before the deadline, maybe even longer, maybe a month before the deadline, they will think, I'm going to do my application. They'll put aside maybe an evening, and they will write their answers. They will probably go on our website, look for some keywords, and they will apply at that point. That's where about 70% of applications sit. And if that's you, then you're automatically competing at the same level as 70%. So how do you get to that extra 30%? How do you get to the higher level of research? So I suggest starting doing your research now. So there are so many opportunities you can get involved in, so many different things that you can do, you can read, that will help you really get a more in-depth knowledge of that business that you're looking to apply to. I don't think it's really enough to just look at the website and pick up some keywords, because you will fall into that 70%. What you want to be doing really is getting beneath the business. So following them on social media, number one point, reading some of the blogs that they put out, watching some of the webinars, reading about their clients, if there's any information about their clients, finding out more about their clients. That way, if you have any questions or anything where you're able to show your commercial awareness, for example, you're able to not only give a good commercial awareness answer, but you're able to tailor it to the business that you're actually applying to, and possibly even tailor it to the clients that they have in the markets that they operate in. And if you're able to do that, it really, really does stand out. So research is number one. The second thing, start your questions in advance. So here at Shakespeare Martineau, we open our application process in January 2021, and we close in June 2021. Most applications will come through a week before the deadline. What I suggest that you do is in January, if you want to apply to our firm, you open up the application then, and I'm not suggesting that you answer the question then, but you open up the application and you look at what those questions are. Maybe even just pop them onto a Word document on your computer. And then as things come up over the period of the next few months, just add things into those, just add things in and think, this is something I've just read today. That might fit really, really well into that question. And then when you get to May, you will probably have the bare bones of a really good answer. And you're not trying to just think of things in retrospect. It's all kind of things that you're coming across as you go along, and you've not missed something. So that's the second thing I would suggest that you do. And then the final thing is checking your document at the end. So you've done all this research, you've done a deep dive into the business, you know a lot about us. You've started your question in advance, so you've started building the framework of how you want to answer it. In May, when you go to answer that question or the series of questions, you've finished writing your answers, but then don't press submit until you've checked it a few times. And how I would suggest that you check it, and I'm sure that this isn't news to anyone, but check it, then double check it, then ask someone else to check it. Then I suggest you leave it for 24 hours and check it again. The reason why I suggest that you do that is because whenever you read a sentence, your brain, if it's something that you've written, your brain knows what it's meant to be reading, so it misses the detail in that sometimes. And there are quite a lot of applications I've seen that have been really good applications, but there are spelling errors and grammar errors. I would say at least 70% of applications last year had some spelling or grammar errors in them. And as a lawyer, you need to be able to put forward a concise argument, and that argument needs to be accurate. If you're a lawyer and you have a spelling error in a legal document, that could cost you a lot of money. That could have a massive impact. So I highly suggest that you go through and read that document, because we do look at attention to detail. We do look at your spelling and grammar, and you can lose points. if your spelling and grammar isn't up to par. And those, you might only lose a couple of points on your application, but when there are hundreds of applications and only less than 10% of them are going through to assessment centre, that couple of points can and will make the difference between getting a spot at assessment centre and not. So your research and starting the question in advance will really help you to stand out and make sure that your answer to your questions are specific and focused towards the business in a way that sets you apart from other applicants. But that attention to detail really makes sure that you are not going to slip up on the final hurdle, because if you put all this work in, you really don't want to slip up on a couple of little spelling mistakes.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I would always put my applications to the side and then read them after a few days, and you'd actually be really surprised at what you think might be an error-free application if you go back after a few days when you've had a chance to get some distance from it. It's crazy to like what you've actually missed. So that's really good advice.
The other thing actually is what I find really interesting. The number of applications that I see that are submitted late at night. I haven't looked at the stats on it, but I think that the majority of them that have errors on them will have been submitted late at night. So never submit your application late at night, because I think people hit a point where they kind of go, do you know what, I'm sure it's fine. I've read it a couple of times, I'm sure it's fine. But your brain's tired at that point. So it's always best to leave it and pick it up in the morning, or as you say, Camilla, pick it up a couple of days later and have another read when you've got fresh eyes. And then you will probably find errors, and you just don't want to slip up on that final hurdle.
So we may have already touched on this, but what are the most common mistakes that you see at the application stage?
Attention to detail. Yeah. I think it is always, it's largely on the little spelling errors. And I think those are things. I think what's upsetting about that is those are things that you have complete control over. So, and I think what's difficult is I think people rely quite a lot on Microsoft Word, and they rely a lot on their spell check.
Yeah,
and spell check will get it wrong. So I have seen applications before where people will say the word this instead of the word that, and Microsoft Word doesn't pick that up. But that changes the entire sentence. That's probably the most common mistake. Yeah, that's the most common mistake, I'd say.
Okay, so before we get to the application stage, how much work experience do you think that a candidate needs before they stand a good chance of making an application? And do you think it needs to be legal or non-legal?
Yeah, do you know what? I really don't like that question, I'll be honest with you. And I think that the reason for that is because it's really difficult to say. Yeah. And I think people really get focused on, I don't have enough work experience. And, I've spoken to a lot of students over the past couple of months at law fairs, and I think people are really concerned about the experience that they've got, and is that enough? But to be completely honest, it's not really even about the amount, but it's more about the content and how you're selling it. So don't worry if you think, you don't have enough. It's really about what you did during that time rather than how much of it you did. Think about what you've learned, and I think people don't sell their non-legal work experience enough. I think there is a real focus on people to get legal work experience, and don't get me wrong, legal work experience is brilliant. Whatever experience you can get will be really, really helpful to you in terms of helping you to decide what firm you want to be in, the type of law you want to be in, and actually just solidifying that you actually want to be in law. So legal work experience is fantastic. But don't downplay your non-legal work experience because it's all really, really relevant. I think if you have experience working in a shop or waitressing, whatever that is, that's customer service experience, and that's absolutely essential for a lawyer. You have clients, you need to be looking after them, you need to be building relationships with them. So that experience is really helpful. Also, if you've been waitressing or working in a shop while you've been studying, that's excellent time management skills. And I'm willing to bet that you've had difficult situations come up while you've been doing that work experience. You might have had situations where your colleagues haven't shown up to work and it's been really, really busy. You get experience dealing with really stressful situations at that point, or time sensitive, time critical situations where you've got a lot of things to do. So that's all really, really good experience. So don't downplay it. Really, really think about what you've learnt in both your legal and non-legal work experience and how that can be transferred to the role of a solicitor.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be really helpful for our listeners to know, because I know, from speaking to quite a few people, I think people think they need to have like lots of legal work experience. So that's really handy to know. So what would you advise to students or graduates who are looking to boost their CV during the pandemic, given that people are working from home at the moment, so it's a lot more difficult to gain work experience?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, Camilla, because it's something that I've come up against quite a lot. While I've been going to a lot of law fairs and speaking to a lot of people, a lot of students and graduates seem to be really concerned about that experience and where they get it. And there also seems to be a bit of concern around training contracts and the availability of these applications and making sure that their applications do stand out during a competitive process. And it's something that we've really taken consideration of here at Shakespeare Martineau and thought about how we can support you. There are a couple of things I would say. So first of all, if you are finding it hard to get work experience, the first thing I would suggest you do is research and read. You can still find out a lot about the legal sector and a lot about law firms just by doing your research. So look on social media, follow people on social media. We have a really high social media presence here at Shakespeare Martineau. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, you will get access to lots of things about the business. So you will see there are lots of webinars that we put out that you can watch. There are lots of blogs. There's also conversations with our CEO and some of the material that she's putting out as well. So there's a really great opportunity for you to learn just by following people on social media. There are also lots of other events that you can still go to. So I would suggest that you do just try and get as much exposure as you can. We actually sat down, myself and our head of talent here at Shakespeare Martineau, and thought about how we can support students and graduates and how we can help you to get some of that experience that I know people are really, really keen to get and fearful that are lacking at the moment. So we've actually designed a virtual insight week that we are running on the 14th to the 18th of December. And the concept of this is to really give you the opportunity to get some of that experience. It's a really comprehensive program. I keep referring to it as a smorgasbord of activities. So it's not just sitting in front of a webinar for a week solid. There are a variety of different events. So there's the opportunity to develop your commercial awareness. We've got a couple of sessions running on COVID and Brexit and the impact of tech on the legal sector. There's the opportunity to speak to people in our business. So we've got kind of paralegal Q&A sessions. We have some partners in the business coming in to talk to you about their career development at the firm and where you can develop your career here. There's the opportunity to learn more about the firm and our culture. So our head of talent and culture is doing a session around what our culture is and around what our ambitions are for the firm. And on the topic of ambitions, our CEO has even said, yes, I'm really happy to do a session. I'd love to meet with some of the students out there. So she's even running a session where you can meet her and pose your questions directly to her as well. And on top of that, we have some sessions to kind of help develop you as well. So I'm running some sessions on applications and assessment centres, as well as giving you some experience of group activities in a virtual assessment centre. So we are running a group activity session as well. So kind of simulating that assessment centre experience and the ability to learn about our academy programme as well. So there are a lot of different things happening that week. And the best thing about it is that there's no application process. It really is for you to pick a program that works for you. All you need to do is go onto our website and go to our Virtual Insights page. So go to our website, search for Virtual Insight Week, and you will find this program. And you just register for the events you want to attend. You can attend all of them. You can attend one of them. It's totally up to you. But it should give you some of that experience that will really, really help you to get that insight that you're needing at the moment, and tailored to you and what your needs are. So that's one thing I would suggest, our Virtual Insight Week. But there are plenty of other ways that you can get involved and learn more about us, learn more about other law firms as well. We also have on our website, if you go onto our training contracts page, you will see we have a Future Lawyers Q&A. So the first Tuesday of every month, we have the opportunity for you to speak to our trainees in a Q&A setting. So there's lots of opportunities. I would just say take advantage of those as much as possible. And if you can, if there's the opportunity to ask questions, do, because you'll get more out of it in that sense.
That sounds great. It sounds like a really great week. And do you think that those sort of experiences can be used to sort of show your sort of commitment to the legal sector when you're making applications?
Yeah, definitely. And I think because someone actually asked me recently, so is that something that I could put on my application that I've attended that? Absolutely. Why wouldn't you? But what's really helpful is, as I think what it comes back to is the point I made before, is it's not just about what you did, but it's about the content of it and what you learned. So yes, definitely write it on applications, but what did you learn in those sessions? What did you learn from coming to that week? That's the key stuff, really.
And then diving in a bit deeper into the work experience section, this is a question that people ask me sometimes, like, how should we be setting out our experiences in the work experience section? Should it be bullet points? Does it need to be a bit more expansive? How should people be selling their experiences?
Yeah, I find that to be a really difficult question to answer, because I don't think there is one set way. I think it really depends on you and what you're most comfortable with, because some people are really comfortable, much more comfortable with bullet points. Some people are much more comfortable with paragraphs. It's totally up to you. I think that the key things for me are to remember to be concise. You want to add the detail in, because the detail is where we really learn about you and what your experience is. And it's what I always say is it's not just about the what, it's about the so what. So rather than just saying I shadowed X lawyer at X firm. So what did you learn in that time? So including that detail is really, really helpful. But you should always try and be concise. At the end of the day, when you're a lawyer, you will need to write concise and convincing arguments. So where better to start than in your application form? So get your information, make sure that it's got the detail in there. But as long as it's concise, I think that you're on the right track.
Brilliant. Thank you for making that clear. So let's move on now to the assessment centre and the interview, which is definitely quite a daunting stage. I'm sure many people will agree. What do you think the best way to prepare for an assessment centre is?
That's a really good question. I think if you've done your application right, then there's actually minimal prep that's required. So, and what I mean by that is if you follow those steps, so we talked before about researching and starting that research early, following us on social media, engaging regularly with blogs, with webinars, you'll learn a lot about the business. So actually when it comes to assessment centre, there's less research you have to do because you've already got it in front of you. You also shouldn't need to cram. You shouldn't need to be thinking, oh gosh, what are the values? What does the business stand for? What are the key words? What are the phrases I need to show? Because you will know them because you'll have been experiencing them for the past 4, 5, 6 months. So I think the biggest advice I have on preparation for an assessment centre is start that research for your application now. The other things I would suggest, so once you've got your research down, you will know there are key themes in that. You will know there are key attributes, key values that the firm has. And think about what you want to show about yourself also. We talk a lot at Shakespeare Martineau about being authentic, collaborative, trusted and brave. So think about, if I'm at an assessment centre, how will I show them that I have those attributes? Because it's not just about telling people, it's about showing them. So how can I show that I'm brave? How can I show that I'm collaborative? So have that in mind. And then the final thing I would say, in terms of us at Shakespeare Martineau, is be yourself. We don't have a cookie cutter approach to recruitment here, and we recruit individuals. We like to do that because, quite honestly, it's we like to have a diversity of people in the firm because you have people bringing different ideas into the fold. And when I say diverse, I mean diverse. I'm not just talking about having equal amounts of men and women. I'm talking about people from different backgrounds, people with different stories to tell. Because when you are collaborating on projects, when you're collaborating on ideas, where you start and where you end will be very different if you have a group of people who have different thoughts, different backgrounds, different stories. So we purposely like to recruit people who are different. So don't think about trying to fit a mold. Just think about what you are proud of about yourself and what your attributes are that you want to show, and do that, because that's what we want to see. So the other thing I would say is prep your space. So we are currently all working remotely. This year our assessment centre went virtual, and it might be virtual again next year. At this point we're not sure, because we don't know what 2021 will look like yet. But if it is virtual, prep your space beforehand. Make sure that you're set up 15 minutes before that starts, because you really don't want to be in a rush 5 minutes before your assessment centre trying to sort out your connectivity. So get on Zoom, get ready 15 minutes before your assessment centre starts. Have a cup of tea, have a pad of paper and a pen next to you, whatever it is that you think you'll need, but just make sure that you're ready. And have a backup plan. So if it is virtual, make sure that you've got, so if you can do a personal hotspot on your phone, make sure you know how to do that, because if your tech cuts out, then it can be really, really stressful. So just think about what you would do. Think about if your tech does fall out, do you have a backup plan? And the final thing I would say is breathe. People will be, I think anyone who came to our assessment centre this year, Camilla, you'll remember my decision to, before the assessment centre started, we did some deep breathing exercises. And I keep saying to people, breathe. We know it's a difficult time. We know assessment centres are challenging, but try and have fun as much as you can. And if you're feeling stressed at all, just try and remember to refocus your breathing, and hopefully that will help you quite a lot. I am doing our virtual Insight Week. I am doing a session specifically on preparing for assessment centres. So if you want more advice, then hopefully that will be an insightful session for you.
Great. I love that. I love all of that advice. I think it's really brilliant, especially about being yourself. I think it can be quite daunting to think, I need to present myself in a certain type of way. But I think, being yourself is the best way at the end of the day. You want to make sure that you're joining somewhere that is going to be a good fit for you. So there's no point being someone else and then turning up to work and then thinking, actually, this potentially isn't the right place for me.
Exactly. We spend so much of our time at work, it's got to be the right fit. And as much as I can sit here and say Shakespeare Martineau is fantastic, and it is fantastic, and I absolutely love it here, it might not be the fit for some people, and that's totally fine. You've got to really work out what works for you, and what it is what sort of business that you want to be in. As you say, don't try and be someone that you're not, because actually what we want to see is who you are.
So what are your top tips for doing well in the group task?
That's a really good question. So number one, I'm going to come back to it again, be yourself. So in all of the activities, just be yourself. But think about the task at hand, and the best way of approaching it. So you're always given a task of some sort, and generally you will have some time to think it through first of all. So use that time wisely. But the other thing I'd say, it is a group task on purpose. So we want to see the role that you take in a team, and we want to see how you collaborate. So I think, really think about not just your ideas, but the other ideas in the group, and how you can bring them together. I think that's kind of a very quick overview, but the main focus on that is really being yourself. I think people quite often will want to think they have to be the loudest, and that's not necessarily the case. It is difficult in a group task, particularly in a virtual setting. When your assessment centre is virtual, it definitely does add another dynamic into it. We are actually, during our virtual Insight Week, running a session which it's called Crushing Problems Group Activity, and it's designed to simulate a group activity in an assessment centre to give you some experience of doing that, really. So if that's something that you are particularly nervous about, then I would highly recommend that you sign up for that event in our virtual Insight Week.
That sounds great. How do you think a candidate can shine during an interview?
That's a really good question. I keep saying that, but it is. So number one, know the company. So you've done your research already, so you should know the business. You will probably also really know the sort of questions that they might ask you, because you've picked up stuff from the assessment centre. You've done your research into the business, so you'll know about the culture by this point. So you'll know the sort of questions that you're likely to be asked. What I would suggest that you do in preparation, if you haven't done it yet, or if you're not familiar with it, look up the STAR technique. So it's spelled STAR, STAR, and it stands for situation, task, action, results. And in my experience, it's a really fantastic tool to use to answer a question. So what it does is it enables you to give enough detail in answer to a question, but for that detail and the answer to still be focused. And it gives us the information that we're really needing. So, for example, if you're asked, when have you worked as part of a team on a problem? You would give the situation, you would give the specific task that you were given to do. You would then talk about what action you took. And you might want to say as a group, but also importantly, you really should also talk about what action you did and then what the outcome was. And I think quite often people miss the outcome bit. They often talk, if they're asked, when did you work as part of a team? They will talk about when they worked as part of a team, but they won't give the outcome and they won't give the result to it. And actually that's really, really helpful, because it could be, we worked as part of a team on this project and it was a university project and we wound up getting an A, and that tells me the outcome. So it's a really, really great tool to use, and I highly recommend that you research it and use it, because that will help you in your interview. And the final thing, when you are given the opportunity to ask questions at the end, make sure that your questions are well thought out, because what you don't want to do, particularly if you've given a great interview, is ask questions that you could probably find the answer to on the internet. You might want to research the interviewers beforehand, and you might have some questions relating specifically to them or their experience, or it might be a question that you have that will help you to really decide if it is the firm that you want to be building your career at. So, a question that's a result of your research and your interest in the firm. But just really try and make sure that your questions are well thought out and focused.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. And I mean, my personal, something that I always used to like to do for interviews, just to kind of get into the frame of mind, was like power posing and things like that, and listening to like really upbeat music, because I think it always helps to go into an interview feeling kind of upbeat and rather than sort of nervous. And
that's a really great idea. Do you know what? I've heard people talking about power posing a lot before, and I think it's brilliant, because you're right. You do. I think whatever you can do to make yourself feel confident, you should do it, because it is super nerve-wracking. And and I say this as a recruiter, but also as someone who's been at assessment centres and been at interviews before in my life. It is super nerve-wracking. So yeah, power posing, that's a great idea. And for some people, it's wearing, even if it is virtual, make sure if it makes you feel more confident to dress up, then do. Just whatever gives you the confidence, really, I think, and helps you to relax a bit at the same time.
Definitely. So let's move on now to virtual events. We've kind of touched on these a little bit already, but like you said, everything's moving on to online platforms at the moment because of the pandemic, and we don't know how long that's going to be going on for. So that, like I said, lots of the events are going to be online now, like open days, insight weeks, and law fairs. So how do you think a candidate should prepare for these types of events?
Good question. I would say the same way as a normal event, to be honest. I think the first thing I say is think about what you want to get from it. So what point are you at with your career? So are you really still thinking, I don't know where I want to be. I don't know what law firm I want to be at. So you're coming to those law fairs thinking, I want to get more experience. I want to get more insight into all the different firms out there. Or are you at a position where you're thinking, I definitely want to be at this firm, or one of these few firms, and I just want to get more information from them. In which case you can focus down into the firms you're speaking to. First thing, I think just think about what you want to get from it. if it is a law fair, research the firms beforehand. And I would actually say, even if you think you know where you want to be, give some research to the other firms, because you might be surprised. And keep an open mind. You never know what you're going to find out, because quite often the time you have in front of people is limited. Preparing beforehand and thinking about what you want to get from it, and if you have any specific questions, that will make sure that you're using that time, that minimal time that you have, you're using it effectively. So yeah, I would say at the law fair itself, they're each different. So some of them you can only engage by chat. Other ones you can actually talk to people. If you can talk to people, do. And on top of that, if you can put your camera on, because I think it's really, really helpful for me as a recruiter to have someone to talk to face to face, because sometimes it does feel like I'm talking at a void. So if you're happy to put a camera on, please do. And it will also just help you to build that relationship.
So one thing that I just wanted to ask you, I wanted to see if this was a myth or whether there was any truth to this, but I've heard in the past that if you impress and ask great questions during an open day or at a law fair, Grad Recruitment might recognise you or remember you or sort of note your name down, and then it could help you get past the initial paper application stage. Is there any truth to that, or is that one of those sort of recruitment myths out there?
In my experience, it is definitely a myth. But that's in my experience. And the reason why I say that is because we work really, really hard to have a really unbiased recruitment process.
Okay.
And we want all of our candidates to be in the same position when their applications are being judged. We wouldn't want to necessarily favour someone because of the question that they've asked at a law fair. If you ask a great question, though, what's really helpful is that you will probably have an answer that's really specific to that. And that answer will really help you to stand out in your application, which might put you in a better position because you've got a more of a standout application.
So it wouldn't necessarily help you to actually get past the stage just by speaking to someone, but you might be able to get some value from that conversation that you can add to your application that might give you something unique to say.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the value that you would get from that conversation. And it comes back to that bit that I said earlier around making your application stand out, and about that research, and how most people will go onto the website, pick a few keywords up and pop that in their application. But if you've asked some really well thought out questions, and you can use those answers in your application, that will make you stand out.
Brilliant. Now, rejections sometimes can be inevitable. Despite our best efforts, we might make what we think is a great application to our dream firm, but something doesn't go right along the way and we receive that rejection. And, I'm sure many candidates have been in that position before. If a candidate receives a rejection from their dream firm, is that the end of the road? Or do you think a candidate can apply a second or even third time if they've been rejected?
Yeah, it's definitely not the end of the road. In fact, I see it as a positive more than anything. If it is your dream firm, please don't give up. You will be, for some people, they'll be at university, they'll be in their second year, and they get that training contract at the dream firm in their second year. And I think that's fantastic, and that's brilliant that they've done that, but that's not the case for everyone. I think most people out there will have rejections, and if it is your dream firm, do not give up. There will be a way forward. It might be that you apply for a training contract again next year, in which case you will have be in a better position, hopefully, because you will have knowledge of that process that you didn't have the year beforehand, and you'll have learnt lessons. The other thing is, think about where else you can go. So if for example, if your dream firm is us at Shakespeare Martineau, firstly, thank you for your dream firm. But if you want to come to us, and let's say you are rejected from your training contract, you can apply next year. Or if you're in a position where you finished your degree and you're looking at paralegal roles, for example, maybe look at coming in and joining us as a legal assistant or a paralegal. And then, when you're in the business, we can help work with you to help you so that you're in a better position when you next apply for a training contract, so that your skills are developed further. to help you to succeed further down the line. So it definitely isn't the end of the road. Should a candidate apply a second or even third time? Yes, absolutely. Please don't give up on your dreams.
Oh, that's really inspiring. So yeah, I mean, thank you so much for answering all of our questions. I feel like I've really asked you so many today, but we've just got one last question, which is, what do you enjoy most about being an early ambitions advisor?
Do you know, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to say that. And I think because there's so many different elements of my job that I love. In my role, I'm able to to help change the way that we develop people at the firm, which is fantastic to be a part of. But I think my favourite moments through my career have always been seeing people qualify, and I will never forget the first person that qualified when I was looking after them, really. And it was really lovely seeing people achieve their dreams. And it's something that you work really hard for, and Camilla, you'll know this because you're going through that process. Yeah. But it's not an easy slog. You're doing your degree, you then got your LPC or your GDL and then LPC, depending on what path you're taking. You've then got the fun times of doing this whole application and assessment centre process. It's competitive. It can be really stressful. So it's not easy. And then to get the training contract, that doesn't mean that it all stops then, because you are working really hard as a trainee. So the moment that you then qualify, I love that, because it's seeing people achieve their goals and achieve their ambitions, and knowing the work that they've done and knowing what they've done to get there is really, really lovely. And knowing that I've been able to help them achieve that is a really, really rewarding experience for me.
Lovely. That sounds really, really sort of fulfilling. So yeah, that's the end of our interview. Thank you so much, Hannah, for being a guest on the podcast. It's been great to have you on the show, and you've provided so much helpful and insightful advice into the whole process. Like you said, it can be really daunting. So hopefully we've provided some guidance to make that journey a little bit easier for the listeners. But yeah, thanks again for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm hoping that was helpful. And if people have other questions, I'm more than happy if people want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or if you've got questions about the future lawyer Q&As or the virtual insight week, just send me a message. If I can help, I'll always try to. So do reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks to all the listeners as well for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
To hear more of the Student Lawyers podcast, hit the subscribe button and leave us a star rating and review. If you would like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com. We'd like to thank Felix Knight for producing this podcast today.